It's very easy for us to become afraid and let fear dominate us, and I think an important message of this book is that there are ways we can be safer. We have to discuss a lot of really bad things in this book, but we're trying to give a perspective that you can, to a large extent, take some control over your life and reduce the chances that terrible things will happen to you without being dominated by fear.
Whenever you find yourself really just overwhelmed by it, you've got to take a step back and realize that certain things are out of your control. So you just have to be aware. You don't have to stop life day by day.
Well, one good example of how we can increase our chances of survival in everyday situations is the airplane. And I'll use that as an example, but think about how it might apply to everyday life. And so one of the first things that you do when you get on the airplane is they go through the safety briefing, and they give you the safety manual to read through. And when they've looked at studies of aircraft crash survivors and things like that, one of the big commonalities, there's not many commonalities between survivors, but one is that they usually had read the safety manual beforehand and listened to the briefing. And there's a few other things that you can do. They tell you to look around and find the nearest exit. That's something that's good to do in any environment. If you're at a restaurant, a bar, a club, a public event, it's always good when you get to a new environment to look around and find out where are the nearest exits. If something happened here where I had to get going, if I had to take off because there was gunfire or there was a dangerous situation, where are my escape routes?
I think it's an incredibly important perspective. I was very brutally raped when I was a second grade child. I was severely bullied in school. I was attacked with a box cutter in my high school in 1979. I was counting up for this book the number of times that somebody tried to kill me with a gun, knife, or bayonet, or some other weapon in my 20 years as a police officer, and I know I got past a dozen instances. And you know, I saw a lot of terrible things as a cop. I've seen terrible things working on these school shootings and accidents and other tragedies as an expert witness. And you know, it's very easy to let these things kind of overwhelm us, but I don't take that attitude, and I don't recommend that you do either.
I hear this all the time. People tell me, well, if somebody wanted to kill you, they'll kill you. Or if somebody wanted to injure you, they'll injure you. They're going to find a way to do it. But I beg to differ. There are a lot of techniques in this book and tips that are written in that book that can help you get out of situations, even when you think it's dire. There are some things like pattern matching recognition, behaviors that you can see in people who want to do harm to you. There are ways that you can detect when a person's carrying a weapon. So there are a lot of tips in this book that will tell you how to get out of a dire situation.
I hope that people are able to take away that they can take care of themselves. We're developing a culture that relies so much on others for everything that we do now. You know, we'll be okay until the police gets here. We'll be okay until the fire department gets here. Well, the person who's primarily responsible for your safety is you. And I think that's what I want people to understand.
You know, people think, well, what about schools 50 years ago? Well, 50 years ago, most kids didn't get a high school diploma. Most kids were kicked out of school at the first sign of trouble. Kids who were poor, kids who were from a different background, racial minorities, kids who had to work. There were a lot of reasons. Kids with handicapping conditions of any type were put out of school. They weren't there. So the school population is a lot different. It's a lot more diverse. It's a lot more challenging. We really are committed to educating all children.
Out of all of this, I don't know why I'm still here. I've been through a lot. I have a very strong faith. I believe I was meant here for a reason, or otherwise I would be dead 2 or 3 times over. From a standpoint of law enforcement, from the standpoint of working and I want to give back. I want to give back. I want to be able to make schools safer. I want to be able to make communities safer. I want to be able to help kids be kids and not worry about school shootings.
Yeah, just again, there's no shame in surviving, I'll tell you that. There's nobody out there that's not afraid of dying or getting injured. There's nobody. Everybody has fear. It's just how you manage it.
You know, I understand that we hear a lot of tragic events on the media Commonly, we see events such as landslides, plane crashes, school shootings, but it's important to keep it in perspective. The world we live in is still a safe place. You can still be safe. It's important to understand that schools, even though we see a lot of tragic events going on TV, such as Sandy Hook, other school shootings and acts of violence, it's important to understand that statistically, school is still a safe place to be. You're still safe in your house. Going to the mall, you're still okay. It's important to understand that even though bad things happen, these occurrences are rare. They're not happening all the time. So keep a positive perspective and a positive outlook. And just remember that you can survive, you can stay alive.
I look at it as if I let this negative event run my life, evil has won. I don't want evil to win. So to make that happen, my life's going to continue, and I'm going to do the best that I can with it. And I'm not going to let that negative event run my life.
And so when we look at preparing ourselves for stay alive and survival, don't just think about the mass shooter or the airplane crash, those things that barely happen. They make big headlines, but they're very, very rare.
One of the messages of the book is we can't let fear dominate the way we think. We should take control of our lives, be responsible for our lives, but we can't let others dictate to us that we need to live in some virtual prison of fear that we've built around us. We can't be to that level of what many people would refer to as paranoia. We have to have the freedom to walk life and enjoy it and savor it. And I think that's what message we try to get across in this book.